Hi everyone, welcome back to another Author Chats. Today with me I have Andy Peloquin, best-selling author of the Darkblade Assassin series. Andy, let's just jump into it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. What to say? It's always a hard question to start off with because you can only say the same thing so many times. I could say, "Hi, I'm Andy," dark epic fantasy author, but then it's like there's got to be more to me than that, right? So I am a snowboarding giant. I'm 6.5 feet tall.
He is big.
Yeah, big. I don't have hair as cool as Michael. I think I type faster. I think that's
You
pretty much
type a
everything you
lot
need to know
faster.
about me.
You type a lot faster. It must be this. It must be your size. You can reach more keys. You know, you can
Yeah,
cover more territory on the keyboard for sure.
I do break keyboards a lot faster. I have my record is about 2 years before my laptop keyboard breaks. I just bought myself a gaming computer because the guy was like, "Oh, the keyboard's much stronger." So hopefully this lasts a little bit longer, but yeah, 2 years is about my average because these are some pretty big sausage fingers.
Jeez. Well, and on that speed. So, what is the what's your highest word count day? Because I think it's going to be quite impressive.
I think my highest word count day, it was a few years ago. It was like 13 or 14,000 words.
Andy, that's disgusting. Like, oh, what is that?
Right
Like,
right now I'm averaging about 5 or 6,000 a day.
Jiminy cricket. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to me. I know. There's some people that might think that's a lot, at least from my perspective. That no wonder you're so prolific, so productive. I mean, how many books in total now? I've lost track completely. How many
So
have you
so have
got?
I, to be perfectly honest. Because I had the what was the Hero of Darkness series, and then I unpublished it and rewrote it. So
Mm.
it was 7 books, and then I sort of combined books, added more, changed it around, and those 7 became 4.5. So I think I'm hovering around 40 books written total, currently 30 published. I think that's about the right number.
It's an awful lot. That's a good catalog, and that's in how many years?
Since 2015, so 7
Wow.
years.
Okay. Yeah. So that you've been at this as long as I have, and you have 5 times the books. Fantastic. But you'll get there if you do 14,000 words in one day. Like that's
That's
such
true.
a big
But
chunk.
that was like at my heyday when I was working insane hours and like pushing myself. I didn't quite burn out, but I was pretty close. So I've kind of scaled
Right.
myself back a bit just to protect my brain and of course my wrists and all that. Last thing
Yeah.
I need is carpal tunnel syndrome or something.
What kind of drove you towards almost the breaking point there? What was it, and what are you doing now to kind of ease off and maybe have a more sustainable career? I suppose.
So what made me almost hit burnout was the fact that I was like full-time writing. Like I think 90% of my time went into writing, which meant 90% of my income was derived from writing, obviously. So some great months, great years even, but then, as always happens, there's the ups and then there's the downs. And those downs, they were stressful because it was like, all right, I got to write the next series, I got to write the next story, I got to write the next book to publish it. So I was doing rapid releases where I would basically release series 1 month apart. So I'd have to write for 6 to 8 months ahead of time to make sure that I had enough books to rapid release. So I was trying to do about 1 book a month, and I managed to do it, but that was very stressful. And then the series that I did after the one where I hit 14,000 words in a day, it was much more complex. So trying to get that many words written in a single day was nearly impossible. And then the books ended up being twice as long.
Yeah.
So there was that pressure of I need to get this book out next month, but it's taking me 3 months to write it. And so it just basically created this sort of unsustainable need to produce that almost took the love away from the art itself and made it much more of a business, like a product that I was trying to sell. The stories themselves, thankfully, I had a good team of people who were like who kicked my ass to make sure that the story quality didn't suffer. But I know that during that time my brain was broken a lot of the time. So what I'm doing now is I've kind of scaled back a bit on the amount of time I spend writing every day. And I've picked up some other, side gigs here and there. I also do like blogging and copywriting and stuff. So I do a bit more of that to sort of guarantee stable income so that
Yeah.
the good months, great. and then they sort of balance out for the bad months, and that's made it a lot less stressful.
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that you suddenly early on you're so driven to try and get some form of success at all, uh, and then the next step after that, what hits you is, oh, this might not happen again,
Yeah.
and how am I going to keep that stability, or how am I going to get any stability in this? There's no stability. It's very light wonky. You have to look at a whole year. You have to accept that you have to average out your year. It's very difficult. And so yes, it's one of the things that I've grappled with occasionally, which is there anything I can do to create some kind of baseline that's stable, which is called a day job, which we don't want. We don't want those. We
No.
want stable income that isn't that somehow. But
Yeah.
it's certainly something that I thought about, how to get that, how to achieve that. I tend to just squirrel a lot of my money away and hope that it does something for me, and I have a rainy day fund. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say even until a couple of years back, until my audio took off for me in a big way, and I had those two formats working well. So I had sort of a second source of income from that. Basically, that's when I started to feel much more calm, because I was like, oh, I've got two things now, dunking money in each month. It's not just this one pinch point where, like, you know. I mean, the whole thing's a pinch point, but it doesn't feel so bad when there's multiple sources that start to help you out a little bit. Absolutely. So
Exactly.
yeah. So Darkblade Assassin. This is the one that I'm most familiar with, because this is what kind of put you on the map as far as the fantasy community is concerned, I think. And you've relaunched it twice now, is that right? I mean, this new rebranding is that also content differences, or was that just a kind of you took it down and rejigged the covers and stuff? Like, walk us through that, because
Yeah.
doing one relaunch successfully is really rare and impressive, but doing it twice, like, that's some kind of black art, some kind of magic. So let us
So
know.
when I first relaunched it, originally the series was called The Last Bucellari. He's a Bucellari, which is half demon race of creatures, right? Um, so when I first published it, I had kind of a basic cover, didn't really have a big understanding of marketing, and it was with a publishing house that didn't really do a whole lot with it. So it kind of launched me into the ether. I kind of got people to know my name, but it was nowhere near successful. So around 2017, I had spent a couple of years studying the marketing and business side. So I got the rights back, and I basically relaunched the same book with a few edits and tweaks and stuff here and there. But it was virtually the same book. That was the Hero of Darkness series, and it was the same version as I had originally written. I had books 1 to 3 written at the time, and book 4 was halfway released. So I just basically launched those three back to back. And that was my most successful launch until Darkblade, and that was, like you said, it's what put me on the map. And that's kind of the stress that built on the other series, because I was trying to basically make lightning strike twice, 3, 4 times to replicate the success. And so when it didn't happen, there was like, oh my god, what am I doing wrong? Am I not good enough? I will never create something amazing again. You know, brain explosions. But
Yes.
then as I got to the end of my sci-fi series, the Cerberus series, I realized that I had grown a lot as a writer. I saw my writing evolve over the course of that essentially 13 book series, and then the military fantasy series beforehand. So when I was coming to the end and trying to figure out what to do next, I was kicking around a few options. I've got new story ideas that are in the works. I've gotten other series that I want to write, but I kept going back to, I need to write a second story arc. The
Mhm.
story was intended to be 6 and done. But by the time I got to the end of book 6 of what was the Hero of Darkness series at the time, I had opened these plot lines that I couldn't not explore. Like, they were so compelling to me as an author, and being so attached to this character. And also I could just torture him so much more and make his story so much grimmer. So I was like, I have to do more. I couldn't do it at the time because I had other projects that I wanted to do. But coming back to it now, or recently in late 21, I knew I had to do it. I had to do the story again. So if I had launched it as Hero of Darkness book 8, then it would have been launched basically into a dead series, because the series had pretty much stopped selling. And that would have been a waste of all my time and effort and all of that. So I was like, all
Sure.
right, if I'm
Yeah.
going to do this, I might as well do it right. And I had read over the reviews. I keep an eye on my reviews because I want to see those bad reviews to know what I'm doing wrong or what I could do better. And a lot of my reviews were commenting about how the character, he was such a badass assassin, but he made such dumb mistakes in the first book. Or the things that happened to him, they kind of made it, he's not so cool after all. I was like, I gotta change that. I gotta fix that. And I worked with a developmental editor, and she actually highlighted a lot of the elements that were great and a lot of the things that could be improved. So it made me realize, all right, I can do this a lot better. So I basically set out to reboot the series. It's the same story overall, and the hunter versus demons, the hunter
Mhm.
protecting a kid, the hunter finding answers about his past. It culminates in the same grand story arc climax, but the route to get there changed, and the execution is so much better. So the series is also much longer. Like before, with those 7 books, it was around 900,000 words. Right now, by the end of book 4, it's going to be well over 1 million because the story just needed more room to breathe. To go from more of an action adventure story to like a proper fantasy epic where everything takes its time, and the pacing is still very consistent, but everything has room to breathe, and you really feel like immersed in the world.
Yeah, I kind of full blown overhaul. I mean, it's also I mean, it's also a risk, right? I mean, it's a big risk to take to do it again because you've that series you might think, well, that's done, uh, and even taking it down and redoing it, there's no guarantee that's going to work again. So definitely
Yeah.
a big risk, but it sounds like it was a real creative endeavor for you. Like it felt really. It sounds like it was a real passion project to go back and revisit
Yeah.
it. And
I
yeah.
basically rebuilt it from the ground up. I researched new titles, I got new covers done with art specifically chosen for its resemblance to my favorite Assassin series. Art that will be evergreen, like the covers that I had before, they were photo manipulation as opposed to
Mhm.
digital illustration. And photo manipulation is out. When I published it in 2018, they were pretty standard. The best the best covers were digital illustration, but I would say 70% of the fantasy covers at the time were photo manipulation. Now, photo
Yeah.
manipulation is pretty much urban fantasy and nothing else. So, getting artwork like this done, it's an evergreen piece of art that no matter what the fads are, the art will still be beautiful. It will still be exactly what I want to do to represent the story. So that was a huge part of it, was getting these new covers, and then rebooting it, telling the story better, basically doubling down on all the grim, dark moments that I loved and that readers hated me for, and making sure that you really felt the dagger twist even deeper in a new way. So it's basically the same story, the same character, but a whole new reading experience.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I mean, I revisited Dragon's Blade in a small way. Um, a year after it finished, I revisited it when I was doing the box set, and I completely scrubbed and edited book one to the point of rewriting it. Same story, same everything, but hopefully a little more polished and um, a few elements dialed up, a few elements dialed down. I didn't really add too much or take too much away, but some of the chapters were too long, so I broke them up and had some intros and outros to help the pace. And um, I think the biggest thing I ever did in one massive chapter was I flipped who started the conversation off with that butterfly for the whole thing, and
Hmm.
it made sense. But there was a bit of a flip there. But yeah, I did something similar there. I left books 2 and 3 mostly as is, but then I added 2 additional chapters to the end of book 3 to try and alleviate some of the issues that people were having with the ending.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of that. I think that helped. I think I could have done even more in some ways. I could come back now and look at it again, but I'm in some ways I'm quite happy to leave that one to rest. I think that's doing fine. That's where it is, and I'm doing other things. But I mean, it's really it is a risk, but it's an admirable risk. I think it shows a real dedication to the craft, like that you want that you had that idea that you want to get through properly, and not to have that fear of, and not just to say, oh well, it's done now. It's like no, it's you wanted to go back and fix it, which um
Yeah.
I think that's good. I mean, people get funny about that. Obviously, with things like George Lucas tweaking some of the Star Wars movies, people get think they should just leave it. But you know, it's your books, it's your story. So if you want
Honestly,
to go back, yeah,
I don't think anybody who read the original version will complain about the changes that I made, because the original version was basically my first book. So, like so many rookie mistakes, or not so many, but enough that I look
Hmm.
back and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I did that because I didn't know any better at the time. So just being able to eliminate those mistakes, things like head hopping or dropping in, point of
Right.
view characters who only existed to show how badass the hunter was, but didn't actually
Yeah.
do anything for the story at large. At the time, it worked great because I had written it actually initially as a graphic novel script. So if it was a graphic novel, the artwork would have been just fine. The whole story would have worked just great. But then I needed to change it into more of a novel thing. So basically rebuilding
Hmm.
it from the ground up changed it, and then I got to add more characters that people could love and I could just murder gruesomely, and just build the world a lot better, execute his emotional journey a lot better, and tell the character story the way it deserves, because honestly the hunter is he's I was inspired by characters like the Punisher, Deadpool, Wolverine, Night Angel, Moon Knight, all these guys. But he's very unique in the sense that he's this combination, this amalgamation of assassin, demon. He's got this dagger in his head that drives him to kill. He's wrestling with his own darker lack of humanity, demonic nature. There's something really interesting about him, and there's so much to explore about our own struggle with our morality versus need, or what we need to do to survive. So telling the story correctly sets it up for more people to get invested into the story and really following along on a journey that's organic to everybody, because we are all in our own way looking for a place in a world where we're kind of misfits in our own way. And that's the story, that's the core of the hunter's story. And that's what compels me to write him so much, or to invest so much of myself into him as I do.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. Like, just that whole thing there was perfect. So what has been your proudest achievement of that character arc, of that series then? What about it have you been really happy with in the final result?
I mean, pretty much everything, honestly. Like it's a
This is
character that
a confident salesman, everyone. This
I no, so I've written 5 series, or five written and published 5 series with five main characters or cast of characters, and there's something about the hunter that I just connect to on a fundamental level, and I think that being able to put this out there and then have readers connect with him, with his emotional turmoil. Obviously, no one knows what it's like to be an assassin. No one knows what it's like, or none of my readers know what it's like to be an assassin, to be a demon, to have a cursed dagger. But in so many ways, they understand the hunter at a visceral level. They understand this desire to belong, this feeling of being an outcast, this looking for connection wherever they can find it, and struggling against, maybe their darker desires, their darker natures, the things, their weaknesses, their faults and failings. And that is something, writing this character that so many people can connect with, is honestly the thing that I'm most proud about. The thing I'm second most proud about is how I found ways to make all of the most grim scenes even grimmer. Like, I still get these people messaging me saying, I can't believe you made me relive that again, and so much worse. And that's when I know I did my job right.
since you got a sinister streak.
100%, and you never know it by looking at me and talking to me. But inside, my
You're
brain is
so
this
happy.
devious thing. I know, right? I'm such an
Yeah, like,
upbeat person.
stay happy on the outside, inside your head must be like something awful. Yeah, must be a
I, you know,
scary place.
it's probably just balancing out my natural, good natured temperament, because it's like whenever I can find a way to make things darker, it's just the way my brain goes, and I lean into it, and it just gets worse, and it's so much fun. I came to this realization a few weeks ago, actually. So my wife, she's not here, so I can say it. She's one of these people who is very much, ups and downs emotionally, right? She has great highs, great lows. I am pretty much flat. So I don't have these big highs and big lows. Obviously, there are moments when I'm super excited. Maybe I'm having a really crappy day and I feel down, but I'm a pretty steady person emotionally. So in order to feel things, in order to be driven to the point of a visceral reaction, or being driven to the point of tears or elation or whatever it is, it has to be it has to be bigger. It's got to be a much grander thing than just sort of, oh yeah, I got something cool, or oh no, I got some bad news. So that's, I think, why I write this, because I want to feel this. So if I'm gonna feel this, I need to really, really dial it up to 11 so I feel this in myself. I've actually cried and had to stop writing at certain things that I've written, and that's how I know that I've done the setup and execution right, because I can feel it.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get the phrasing right, but there's some phrase about writing where you're meant to bleed onto the page, right? So it
Yeah.
sounds like you've mastered that art, so to speak. Um, Now you've been indie publishing pretty much this whole time. Is that right? With some dabbling, some small press stuff and things like this.
Yeah,
I
since
mean, and
2018.
yeah, you've got a lot of books out and stuff. So what so far? I asked this of a lot of uh, my indie guests because we have so much more in the. I don't know if that's fair to say that we have more in the trenches than trad publishers. It's probably about the same these days. But what's been the biggest eye-opening experience of it so far? Maybe something that you just didn't expect or that's taken you aback, like of the whole thing, all publishing.
Probably the hardest thing to swallow is the way that the market's always evolving. Things change from one day to the next, and if you're not on top of that change, you could be left behind, or your effectiveness decreases. I'm seeing this a lot recently from a lot of authors. They're like, "Oh, my Amazon ads or my Facebook ads just aren't working anymore." Or even
Yeah,
Instagram, which was the big thing a year ago, isn't getting the same results. Now everyone's on TikTok. I am not a TikTok personality, so that's one method of advertising that I will probably never get to or never effectively use. So that means that my capabilities are just that much smaller compared to some of the other authors who use TikTok. It's something that you always have to be evolving. If you settle and become a dinosaur, sometimes you see less success, or your success dries up from one day to the next. That's probably one of the hardest things for me.
yeah. It's always moving. I think if you punch into a certain weight class, you're immune from that. But the rest of us trying to scrabble around and find that safety rope up, grab the helicopter rope
Yeah.
as it pulls you out the ocean that's thrumming around. It's a tough one. It's always moving around, and even recently, it'd be interesting to talk about this a little bit, given it's current. But Sanderson basically blown the barn doors off of Kickstarter. People we know people that have been doing that. Have you done one yourself? I think is
I
that right?
haven't. I have.
You
I
haven't,
have
right?
a book that I am like. I'm going to write this book, and I've
Yeah,
considered kickstarting it, selling it directly off my website as well, to open a new line, a new stream of income instead of relying entirely on Amazon.
yeah.
Um, we'll see if that happens. I'm probably not going to get to this book until next year, it seems, because I've got so many other stories that I need to work on. But I have considered it. I just haven't had the product to kickstart yet.
Sure. So, but we know plenty of people that are doing it, even a year ago, before now. But this is like it's really put
Yeah.
it on the map. Everyone's now aware of it, and I suspect over the next year or so, we're going to see Kickstarter flooded with more book stuff, which may or may not help. I don't know because sometimes flooding things dilutes it. Sometimes we're not sure. But
Yeah.
that's a year ago, it wasn't necessarily seen as the thing that you must do. I think now it's becoming a thing like you probably have to start doing this in some ways. I think if you don't start at some point doing this, you'll be left out a little bit, right? In some form. Whether it's special
Yeah.
editions, whether it's the whole thing, but it's just this extra avenue that's opening up. And you want to get in this. So we have to consider that now in a way that, as a few years ago it just wasn't something we were considering really.
Yeah.
And that changes so fast. There'll be something else. That's a whole different approach. Um, it is hard to keep up with it, especially when really, I mean, day to day, I only do one book a year, and so far, I mean, that's just the way it's turned out. I'm mostly worried and stressed about getting the story right. Never mind trying to keep my hand on. You have to run really fast to stay still,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm still trying to. I mean, really, all I care about in some ways is I only care about getting the story right, and will the story be good? And you've got all this mental energy going into like keeping a beady eye on what's happening, and making sure you're not, as you say, becoming a dinosaur or getting complacent.
Yeah.
Um, it's very, very tough. And it's not something that you expect. I think from the outside looking in, you think, well, books are books. We buy them, where you buy them from doesn't really change, hasn't really changed for a long time. So you think, it's just you put the book up and, that's and
Yeah, if
somehow
only it were
people
that
will find
easy.
it. But yeah, yeah, somehow people you don't think about the background stuff is changing so fast. Nothing prepares you for that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's rough. So what's your, I mean, the Kickstarter stuff there. I mean, what do you think? What do you think of it? Oh, $30 million. That's not bad.
You know what? I love the fact that he brought a lot of people to Kickstarter. I dislike the fact that now if I run one, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're just copying Brandon Sanderson."
Right.
When
Yeah.
I had this
Yeah.
idea before he did it, I'm super stubborn like that. Like someone told me that my book sounded a lot like the Elric series
Yeah.
by crap, what's his
Moorcock.
name? There you go. So I have not read those because I'm like, no, I am not going to be, no, I cannot be a ripoff. Someone told me it was like Waylander. So it took me years. I only read Waylander for the first time last year because I was like, I am not going to be, I'm a stubbornly maintain that no, I've never read, Waylander, so no one can accuse me of that. That's kind of how I am with things. So with Kickstarter, I've got to wait at least a year until the hubbub dies down and no one can accuse me of ripping off Sanderson. Then I'll do it.
I think everyone's going to jump into it, and rightly or wrongly, I think it's going to be a surge, and God knows what that'll do.
Yeah.
Um, I think my only worry about it is that people may start to expect it because kind of whatever the big people do, people sort of assume that you can do. They don't, like how he's achieving that is, um yeah, partly how he's achieving that is in terms of the background stuff and putting it up and getting all the designs together and doing all
Yeah.
of the back end stuff is that he has his own company with dozens of employees that handle everything. He has his own warehouse, which is a really big deal. He has the capacity to get all that. It's a whole team of people are going to do all of that for him. No worries for him, right? He's not going to put anything into a package and take it to the post office, and any of that stuff. Whereas the rest of us, I mean, we've seen some of our friends with their basements with the boxes and and you think it's the capacity just isn't there for us to do that sort of same scale necessarily.
Yeah.
And my only concern is a bit like how for a while it was really hard to get hardbacks as an indie author. I mean, it's still kind of it's not hard now. You can do it. It's just an extra
Yeah.
expense. Now it's a bit of a faff. But for a while it was really hard to get them at all. And people just were kind of like, "Well, where's your hardback?" It's like, "Well, I just can't get it. It's
Yeah.
impractical currently to do that." But and so that you get a little bit of a knock. So my only worry is there'll be this expectation of, "Well, where's your hardcover, full bound signed, interior artwork editions because that's the new standard." I'm like, well, I don't know if I have, that in me at the moment. I'd love to do those things. It
Yeah.
sounds fantastic, and hopefully I can. But I worry that it might become like a knock on people rather than because I think people just assume that it can be done, and they don't think about that back and stuff and how you only ever see Sanderson in his video. You don't see the whole organization behind him. He's his own industry now, which is
Yeah.
super admirable and inspirational. But it's like that's 99.99% of us aren't that, and probably will never be that. So we have to find other methods, and we won't necessarily be able to do as much in our Kickstarters either. So I worry that people might be like, "Well, I don't. This one's lame. I got 4 books of that one. I got 4 books, and they were all this and da da da, and all this stuff."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I can't. I can't do all the shebang. I can't make the figurines and the whatever else.
Yeah. And even
um,
if his Kickstarter barely squeaked by, he's still backed by $1 million royalty checks. So it's
yeah,
like the capabilities, even if his Kickstarter, even if he didn't Kickstarter and he just gave everybody all those books and all of that stuff, he'd be totally fine. Whereas an author who's, all right, they're using their Kickstarter to kind of level up, but they don't have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars behind that, it's a lot more difficult. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I don't think that people are going to come to expect that level of it. I do think they will expect a certain degree of quality now that he's sort of set the standard. You've got the top 1%, right, which Brandon Sanderson set, then you've got the top 10%. And as long as you're not in the bottom 25% on, whatever you're kickstarting, your value is, at least, top 40, 50%, you should be okay. So you like, you just kind of got to see what else is going on at the time that you're launching your Kickstarter, and then just try to one up that, as opposed to trying to be the Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter.
Sure, but yeah, I'm like you. I'm like, I must be, I must match it. I must.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
it's sort of that
And that's a
wild rhythmness
recipe,
too. It's a
huge
recipe for
recipe for
disaster.
disaster. I've kind of staked my author career. I've not like I've approached my author career as I am never going to be the next Brandon Sanderson, the next Stephen King, the next whatever. But I'm also never going to be those guys who get their descriptions of women roasted on Twitter, or they're just absolute terrible writing. I'm going to be the top of the middle of the pack, and I'll be okay with that. I will work my ass off to be slightly better than average, the upper middle class of authors, and I'm okay with that.
It's a hard enough place to be. So,
Yeah, it really is.
it really is. It really is. I do think it's interesting that it might also possibly tentatively help push people towards just the concept of buying from us directly via the Kickstarter. I mean, the Kickstarter, you're not buying from our website, but it's the Kickstarter. It's not Amazon. So you are starting to get the idea that, oh, maybe we don't have to buy and sell everything on Amazon or Audible. Maybe there are other ways, which is very heartening. And whether
Yeah.
it's we do it through Kickstarter and then we can host it on our site and people get more comfortable buying directly from us. That would be the next generation sort of change. The way that Kindle was so revolutionary. The next big revolution, I
Yeah.
think, is direct sales, getting people off Amazon, off of Audible, onto the website, our websites. Don't know how that's going to happen. Don't know when, but that would be the next thing. And this is but one baby step in that direction. But I think it's so important.
Yeah, so the key, I mean, that's what is so exciting about this Kickstarter trend, is that people are going to be comfortable with another way of paying. Right now, you go to Amazon, you click buy, you can one click and it's got your credit card saved. It'll charge you zero hassle. Everyone knows how to buy on Amazon.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know how to buy on Kickstarter until, oh my God, Brandon Sanderson's got this awesome deal. Let me go take the hassle of figuring out how to buy on Kickstarter. Oh, wait, it's actually exactly the same as Amazon, just with a different layout, essentially. My card's already saved to Kickstarter. I'm used to buying on a new platform. This whole thing. As soon as a solution comes along that allows equally simple and efficient direct sales for authors, that's, I think, it's going to be the game changer. If they're like that's what made Amazon so successful, like you said.
Yeah.
It was so
Mhm.
easy. People want easy. They want ridiculously, stupidly easy. I do. You do. We all do. The easier it is, the easier it is. All right, that's what it comes down to. So being able to do that, like if Kickstarter or whatever Kickstarter, financial platform Kickstarter uses, allows for direct sales on website, you've got a super simple step that'll get you there. Already there's a lot of payment processing
Yeah.
services
There's
like PayPal and all of that
there's
let
there's a
you do
lot
it,
that
but
you
it's
can
not as
get.
intuitive.
No, you can get there's a lot of slick ways now on your website that you can have the payment processes be pretty simple, but you can't store the card data, obviously, and these things. And obviously, if someone buys an ebook, it doesn't just go straight onto their Kindle. There's some manual effort from their part. I
Exactly.
don't know how we ever get around that, but yeah, we just little baby steps in these directions. I think it's going to be suitable because
Exactly.
I don't know if you read his Q&A, Sanderson's Q&A that he put out there.
Yeah, I did.
Very long post. It was really, I agreed with every single word of it. It was just like, this works great when you're flying high, but at any moment it might just collapse. When you sell all your books, everything through one platform, or this is
Yeah.
one point where it could all fall over. Um, Opening up other avenues where people will be willing to buy and getting them used to that, and having a bit more control, as we talked about early on, making sure that fear of it just all falling away to nothing.
Yeah.
This is really important, and I don't. If readers, if you're out there, like this is what our existential dread is, that Amazon kicks us off, because sometimes we've heard of those stories. I don't
Yeah.
think it's quite as arbitrary as people make out. I think usually there's some reason, but it could happen. They could just mistakenly do it. You never know. And if you're kicked off Amazon or something, for whatever reason, you're done. You're
Yeah.
completely done. There's no recourse. and you know that just doesn't seem like a good idea. It is a monopoly. There's no getting around it.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
so for us, we're always thinking about ways that we can try and do other ways, other platforms, other things. People are going to say, "Oh, just go wide." Yeah, look, can't go wide. Okay, it's not. That's not either easy. And look, when all the other platforms combined, even at the highest possible sales levels, probably don't make up the loss that you'll get from leaving Amazon exclusive. You can't ask us to. It's not viable just to say go wide. Okay,
Yeah.
it's not that's not a viable option. So until that's a viable option, we can't do it. So it's something we think about a lot, and so that's one thing that I've been quite heartened by seeing his do very well, to see Will White's do very well, and to see other folks, just being able to fund theirs, the much more modest ones, but fund it within 24 hours, 40, 72 hours. It's good to see that happening. I think it's really, really positive, all in
Yeah.
the right move. Yeah, absolutely.
It is encouraging.
Um, yeah, let's go back to the writing a little bit. Getting all those words down as you do, still scares me. Do you plan it out, or do you just pants to high heaven? Are you like the fastest pantser in the world, or do you plot
Phew,
it
no.
so well that you can then blast it out?
Neither. So I
Neither.
am I'm about
Good.
75% plotter and
Okay.
25% pantser. So I
Okay.
have can I share my screen?
Yeah. Good question. You'd think yes,
Let me
at least
see
on
if I
my end. There's the
let me see if I can do this. I can show you. Yeah, here we go. All right, I will share my outlines. So this here is a pretty good example of my kind of outline. Right? You can see there's just basically the bones of the chapter going on. You can see there's little bits and pieces. There's some moments that I want to have. There's settings, stuff like that. But as I write it, it evolves. It becomes a different story than it originally was, or it changes or it expands. Like right now, this you can see this is chapter 8 in my original outline. It's actually chapter 16 because it's taken me that many chapters
right. Yeah.
to to
To
tell the
get there.
story up to that point. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way that I work. I have an outline that I follow. I know where the story's going. It keeps me on track, but then it still allows me um, to flex and bend and change and adapt and obviously expand. Like my last book was the last book I wrote was supposed to be around 250,000 words. It ended up at 325, the longest I've ever written, because the story I wanted to tell just needed more time. You know, you've got this amazing plot twist or this gut wrenching death scene, but it takes you 50,000 words to set that up because taking the death scene example. You have to like the character or hate the character. You can't be ambivalent about it. If it's a death scene that you're like, yes, they died, you have to really hate them. And it takes time to make someone hate a character. Like, it's not just a little bit of dislike, oh, he's kind of an asshole. You gotta, like, show it again and again and bigger until they finally die and you feel vindicated for wanting them to die because it's not something that we humans usually want to happen. So it takes time to get that. Or with a character that you don't want to die and you're absolutely devastated, you got to keep making them matter to the main character or to the characters around them. And that's not just one scene or two scenes. That's scene after scene, chapter after chapter. Every chance you get, you drop in these connections, you build them out, you make them more engaging, more likable, more relatable. You understand their plight, their story, their struggle, their desires, their dreams, and then when you see it all snuffed out in a very painful way, then you feel it. So it takes so many more words to do these things. You know, if I was just going for a sort of a light action adventure story, I could get away with a lot shorter books because you don't need as much depth. You know, you got to make them connect to the main character and the stakes and all of that. But it's not like you've got this deep connection to all of the characters in the way, or the way that I write. I just need more words. So I have this outline to follow, but then I pants the character moments, the individual moments, the little conversations, the little nuances between the characters, the themes, the motifs, the way that the story twists and turns as I write it.
I think that's really similar to how I do it. I think you said 70% planning. Is that right? Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
75%.
I think I used to think I was that, because I plan out books and chunks of books ahead of time relatively well. I find it very, very hard to start at all before I know what my ending is going to be, at least for the
Yeah.
principal main characters. Um, right now, I don't know quite what's happening with one of my POVs, and I'm just leaving that POV to one side while I write the others because I've got plenty to
Yep.
get on with. But the others, I kind of know what I want to end. That way, I can kind of work my way. I have some beats in there, and I put as much into the skeleton as I can, but then I just have to sort of start. And until I start and get that first however many tens of thousands of words done, and then hit a certain wall, and then think about it again, and then I might go back to the plan, and I might flesh it out a little bit, and then I'll go back. But I think, I mean, actually thinking really deeply on how I operate, it's probably more like 75% pantsing and 25% planning, probably,
Wow.
because a lot of the planning is a result of just writing the thing, and then the ideas will come, and then I wrote them down. So there were kind of a result of just organically doing it. Sometimes now I don't know if I was always this way. It's hard to remember, but sometimes I'm like I just don't have an idea for how this goes forward, and then I start writing like a bit of it, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's what that
It
person
works
thinks, and
itself
then
out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think I'm actually much more of a pantser than I thought I was. But I will when it comes to certain elements, if it's like something with the magic system or something with a kind of things that need to be foreshadowed in the right way. That's why I need to know where the ending is. If I know what that is and I know what some of the key moments are, then you pantsing
Mhm.
towards it is much easier than completely making it up, especially with the magic system and like some of those mechanical elements like what key item are they going to find or whatever, and how this what consequences of the world building. I will sit and think about those quite deeply. But in terms of character arcs and the flow of the story is much more pants than I think I
Yeah.
would admit to. I think I'd like to think I'm a planner, but I'm really a pantser.
No, and I think a lot of what I would or what people call expertise or experience as a writer is just basically learning to trust yourself, your brain, your creativity. That like that outline 2 3 years ago, it would have terrified me because I didn't know what was happening in each of those scenes. I didn't know the exact pacing, the exact
Mm.
flow of the conversations. It was just it's a bit more free for all. But I know where I need to get, and I know that my brain, when I sit down and write, will figure it out. So there's sort of this innate trust. I mean, having written 40 plus books at this point, I know that I can figure it out. It may take longer, it may be stressful, but at the end of the day, I will have it figured out. So just like, all right, I got this. That's honestly how I start writing. I got this, and then I start writing, and then maybe it takes me longer or it goes a different way, but then why did my brain send me down this path that I hadn't planned? Why did my brain come up with this thing? Figure it out as I write it. And eventually you just start to trust yourself. And then I think that's when a lot of the self-doubt and second guessing, it doesn't permanently go away, but you're a little bit better at ignoring it while you're writing.
Yeah, and I think another important sort of maybe the flip side of that coin is learning to trust when something is telling you that it's not working, right? Because I think early on, I think especially when I did my first draft of the first book, you hit a point where you're starting to gain some momentum and you start writing, and it might come out quite quickly, and you start to think, oh, this is going really smoothly, this is fantastic, and you're in a sort of like euphoric moment where you just feel like you're getting the story down, but you're not listening to any, you haven't honed any instinct to be like, is this actually good enough yet, or is this working properly? You're just so delighted that the words are getting down and you're sort of hammering through the story.
Yeah.
Then develops this thing of like, which it feels like doubt, and if it's just too much doubt, you might not have to. You want a soldier on, like you're saying, but occasionally you might have to be like, hold on, why am I feeling this way? Something isn't working. Which I have to look at this and reflect on this and think about why it's not working and fix it. And then trusting that when you stop feeling that, when you've made your tweaks, and you suddenly feel like, oh, okay, I don't have that impediment now, that you have fixed it and that you can now move on. Like it's this really hard balance, right? You've got to soldier on sometimes, but also know when you do need to backtrack, because if you don't listen to that gut instinct, you may put something out or you may not work on something as much as it needs. As you say, those scenes that you're talking about where you've got to build up to that moment, you might rush to that moment and you haven't laid all the steps in, and you don't feel, you've got to listen to your gut as well, both ways. And it conflicts. It shouts lots of things at us. It shouts conflicting things. Often it just shouts that I'm hungry, which isn't very helpful. Um,
Usually I'm
maybe,
having coffee when I write, so I'm okay. I'm not hungry.
right, yeah. I've tried actually just switching to get up, don't eat, take coffee, sort of fast, and then have a big meal late in the afternoon, and then have an early dinner, kind of compress the eating window. And when I do that well, I find it works very well. Uh, Sometimes I just get too hungry, but I'm building up to it.
Yeah.
Actually, people talk about the fasting, and you get a little brain boost after so many hours. I don't know whether that's placebo and I feel it, but I think after a certain point, I actually do feel kind of something. I feel something benefit for doing it. So I'm going to keep at it and see if that helps. We have a question for you, Andy, from a member of the Discord here, the Penther. Quite a fun one, I think. He's asking, what, if any, mythical creatures would you bring into the world? And I presume he means the real world. So which of these creatures would you foist upon us?
Okay, well, we'll do this. We'll do this both ways. I interpreted it. Which creatures would I bring into the world that I've created? So,
Okay.
if I had to bring any creature from my fantasy world into the real world, it would be the Enfield from my Silent Champion series. The Enfield is half fox, half eagle. And so it's basically a fox front with eagle wings and claws. And this Enfield that I wrote was basically you met him as just like a little infant. And so he's this adorable little snuggly bundle of awesomeness. And then over the course of the series, he develops into kind of a cool little badass creature. So I think it would be awesome to see these guys flying around and get one for a pet. That's the kind of pet that I would have. Now, what mythical creature would I bring? Would I import into my fantasy world? The one that really stands out to me is Oliphant from Lord of the Rings, or
Yeah.
literally any
Hmm.
kind of elephant-like creature. I think there's something so fun about elephants. You can go any direction with them. You can make them sort of like the slow-witted companions. You could make them the sort of infantile humor element, like a little baby elephant stumbling
Yeah.
around,
Very
getting
funny.
caught.
Yeah.
It could be adorable.
Tripping up over its own trunk.
Exactly. And then you can make it kind of the raging mama bear, mama elephant type, or even like an elephant that's like, been bitten, whether it's a zombie elephant or, infected by magic. There's just something amazing about a creature with so much power, but the potential for such gentleness at the same time. It creates this dichotomy that I love. I always do that. My characters, they're always these weird balances. Like the hunter is this badass, ruthless, violent guy who kills, and yet he's super protective over these young kids or these, this old woman or these lepers and beggars. I love showing how appearances can be deceiving, or like playing with those dichotomies. And so elephants are definitely one of the most one of the coolest things. I do have this idea for dragons where it's like these different age dragons. So it's the mother dragon, the wise, majestic being, and then there's like siblings, and then the youngest is basically like a cat, where it's
Hmm.
like flying around, knocking shit off the table, breathing fire instead of scratching, just like that. And then there's sort of like a big wolfhound kind of thing that's 3 times the dragon's size, but is scared of it, and sort of playing off the cats and dogs differences. So I think these are the creatures that I would have a lot of fun with, just because they present the opportunity for so much maybe
Hmm.
lightheartedness, but then they're also classic fantasy.
What you need to do is create a whole new subgenre for elephant riders. So sack dragon riders, right? Elephant riders, they'll all have different magic types, and they'll stampede around or whatever. And
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
phenomenal.
and their cloaks would look like trunks or something, and they
Yeah.
would have like ivory weapons or some. Yeah, go on. You write
I'm
books
gonna tell
fast
you
enough.
this.
You can
I'm
crank
gonna
one
tell
out.
you this right
You can
now.
crank one out, Andy.
My next series is the next book in my series, the hunter, he goes to sort of a Central African area. So now I will be writing the African elephant-esque creature into my fantasy world. So thank you, the Panther, for making me think of
Perfect.
that.
Perfect. There we go. All rights reserved. um, that's great. Um, just conscious of time here, Andy. I want to ask. I asked this of a lot of people. I want to pick your brain on this question as well, just before we wrap up. So, if you could go back in time now, before you launched that very first book, before all this began, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Whew, that's such a tough question. Like, I know that all the mistakes that I made along the way got me here, and if I hadn't made those mistakes, I wouldn't know they were mistakes to avoid them again in the future, if that makes sense. I think I would probably tell myself to take time on each character moment. Like, the reason that my stories end up being so much longer is that every scene kind of has time to breathe, where it's not, rushing through the dialogue, but sort of getting to the nuances of the conversation or the way the character feels in response to the dialogue. Or maybe he's going somewhere and he sees something along the way and you see how he feels, and sort of kind of immerses you more fully into the world. Whereas the original version, um Hero of Darkness, Darkblade Assassin, it was much more, it was much faster paced, right? I was trying to write a kick-ass action story. It was basically like a super cool thriller, but in fantasy. And it was an amazing story that I loved, and I love it enough that I wanted to redo it. But I think if I'd taken the time to really give each of those character scenes time to breathe and develop, kind of like wine. When you're a
Mm,
teenager, you chug that wine because you're trying to get drunk. When you're an adult, or when you're me, you savor the wine, you savor the different complexity, the flavors, the differences between the different grapes and all of that. So I kind of approach writing the way I do my wine drinking right now.
excellent advice. Don't write to get drunk. Write to savor
Exactly.
every taste. Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I guess I think it harkens to something we talked about, which is that initial momentum and drive that people that we all seem to have had at some point, and you start going really really fast at a million miles an hour. It's worth allowing yourself to like slow down. It's okay. Let that story breathe. Let it be fine. Don't feel too rushed. You know, don't feel too rushed, and let it be as good as it can be.
Exactly, because honestly, that's what connects people to the story. The action scenes and the killing and the cool shit. Obviously, everybody loves that, but that's just there as basically as window dressing. What you want is this real connection with the character. It's why romance novels are the single most popular genre in the world, is because they understand the desire for love. They see someone falling in love and they're like, oh, this is amazing. I want that. It's this sort of wish fulfillment. So fantasy can do the same thing in a totally different way. Instead of it being a romance, or even there's romance in fantasy, but just having this way of creating a character who's just like you, who's just like me, but just different enough that I'm intrigued in the world around him, the magic, the weaponry, the cool stuff. But then he's super relatable to you and me. I find so much of myself in him. Okay, I want to keep reading, and that's how you get someone to read through a 12-book series.
Yeah, you absolutely need the emotional connection, 100%. If it's not there, the whole thing isn't going to work. No amount of cool
Yeah.
stuff will make you care, and
Nope.
many movies could learn that as well. I think. Um,
Absolutely.
but the one piece of advice that you should have told yourself is elephant riders. I'm serious.
Elephant. You
Let's
know
make it happen, man.
that absolutely.
I look forward to seeing that in the next book. Well, just before we wrap up, I know there's some more questions in the Q&A channel, but those ones are more directed directly at me, guys. So rather than take up this time with Andy, I will answer those in the text channel myself. I'll respond to those. Don't worry about that. But yeah, Andy, I'd like to thank you for joining me tonight. It's been really fun. Um, would you like to let everyone know where they can find you on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. Just search my name, Andy Peloquin. That's my website, andypeloquin.com. I'm on Amazon, Facebook. Everything's under Andy. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Absolutely, yeah, anytime, and hopefully we can meet up again in person sometime if I get over to the States.
Yeah, or when I get over there. My brother actually, he's living in London. So we've been planning a visit over there. So maybe we could meet around there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm in London, so let me know when you're coming. That'd be great.
Perfect.
All right. Well, bye for now, guys, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye bye.